Welcome to Revisit Books podcast, where we turn books into bite-sized wisdom you can use every day. I'm just so thrilled you're joining us right now. Today, we are on a mission to uncover how you can literally rewire your brain.
And we mean literally.
Yes, literally physically change the structure of your mind to find more peace, more resilience, and just less chaos in general. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed or if you've ever tried to force a new habit using that famous 21 days to form a habit rule.
Oh, that old rule.
Right, and then you felt like a total failure when it didn't stick. Well, I have a massive spoiler for you. That rule is completely wrong.
Completely wrong.
We are going to completely bust that myth today. I am joined, as always, by our resident expert to help guide you through this incredible material.
It's wonderful to be here with you today. This is such a vital topic because we are living in a world that feels incredibly chaotic right now.
It really does.
We cannot control the chaotic events of the world, the economy, or other people's actions. But we hold incredible, completely untapped power over how our own minds process those events. And learning how to harness that power, it changes absolutely everything.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are exploring the groundbreaking book, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess by Dr. Caroline Leaf. For some background, Dr. Leaf is a communication pathologist and a cognitive neuroscientist.
With over 30 years of clinical practice and research under her belt, I should add.
Exactly. She was studying neuroplasticity back when the scientific consensus still largely believed the adult brain was fixed and unchanging. So she is not just throwing out nice-sounding theories, she brings a wealth of hard clinical data to the table.
That background is crucial to understand the core problem we are facing today. I mean, we live in a society that is absolutely plagued by anxiety, toxic stress, and burnout.
Yeah, totally plagued by it.
For decades, the traditional biomedical model has often treated these struggles purely as diseases. If you feel anxious or depressed, the prevailing narrative is often that you have a defective brain, a chemical imbalance that defines you, or that these feelings are your permanent identity.
Which is terrifying to hear from a doctor.
It is. It can feel like you are handed a label and told that the best you can hope for is to just, manage the symptoms indefinitely.
And that is where Dr. Leaf introduces this massive paradigm-shifting perspective. She argues that anxiety and depression are not your identity. They are not diseases to be terrified of. They are actually physical and emotional warning signals.
Warning signals, precisely.
It's your body and mind acting like a smoke detector, trying to tell you that there is a fire somewhere in your non-conscious mind that needs your attention. This book moves us away from just managing symptoms and into something she calls active mind management, using a scientifically proven 5-step system called the Neurocycle.
It is a profound shift from a symptom-centered approach to a story-centered approach. Instead of asking what is wrong with your brain, the focus shifts to what is your mind trying to tell you.
Right.
The neurocycle is the bridge from just knowing that you are stressed to actually repairing the neural pathways causing that stress.
I really appreciate that approach because it is so incredibly relatable. How often do you, and I'm talking directly to you listening right now, gather all this amazing information? You read the best self-help books, you listen to discussions like this, you follow wellness influencers, you know all about mindfulness and yoga.
But then you don't actually know how to apply any of it when you're having a total meltdown on a Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly. We consume so much data, but we severely lack the mental infrastructure to put it into action. I know for me, when I first read the section on how our daily habits shape our neural pathways, it completely reframed a habit I have of doom scrolling before bed.
Oh, the doom scrolling. We've all been there.
Right. I wasn't just wasting time or ruining my sleep hygiene. I was actively wiring anxiety into my physical brain tissue. That is a sobering realization.
That is a perfect example of the disconnect between knowing and doing. We absorb the data that doom scrolling is bad, but without a mechanism to change the behavior, we keep doing it and then feel guilty. So we have to ask, who is this breakdown really for?
It is for you, especially if you are the person who feels paralyzed by information overload. It's for you if you find yourself stuck in toxic thought loops, like constantly beating yourself up, thinking, if only I had done this, or if only I had said that.
Those if-only loops are so common.
They really are. Or, frankly, if you are someone who feels secretly lonely because you tried to think positively or say daily affirmations in the mirror, and it didn't magically fix your life or your depression.
We really need to pause and validate that specific experience for the listener. The wellness industry, despite all its good intentions, can sometimes create a highly toxic sense of guilt.
Oh, absolutely.
It often implies a simple transaction. Like, if you just do X, Why will inevitably happen. If you just meditate for 10 minutes, you'll be peaceful. If you just visualize success, the bad stuff goes away.
And when it doesn't work out that way?
Because human psychology is vastly more complex than that, you internalize the failure and think, what is wrong with me? Why am I broken?
I hear that, but let's push back on this toxic guilt of the wellness industry for a second. If Dr. Leaf is telling us we are the architects of our brains, doesn't that just create a different type of pressure?
How do you mean?
Well, if I'm anxious or if I'm stuck in a depressive rut, isn't it now my fault for building a bad thought tree? Doesn't that risk making the listener feel even more responsible for their own misery?
That is a fantastic point and a very common concern. But the distinction Dr. Leaf makes is between fault and responsibility. You are not at fault for the trauma you experienced, the stressful environment you were placed in, or the survival mechanisms your brain adopted when you were too young or too overwhelmed to know better.
Okay, that makes sense.
Your non-conscious mind built those toxic thought trees as a way to protect you. So, the architecture of your current distress is not your fault. However, once you become aware of it, you do have the profound biological capability and therefore the responsibility to yourself to renovate that architecture.
So it's about empowerment, not blame.
Exactly. This discussion is for the listener who wants to ditch those unrealistic industry standards of healing. Healing isn't linear, and it isn't about blaming yourself. This method is a scientifically backed, highly customizable way to take back control of your own narrative without the shame.
That distinction makes all the difference. We aren't to blame for the initial construction, but we hold the power for the renovation. So let's dive into the core of how this actually works. We've distilled Dr. Leaf's research into 5 key takeaways. We are going to present these as numbered points so we can logically build this framework together.
Sounds perfect. Let's start with the foundation.
Takeaway 1. Your mind drives your brain, not the other way around.
This is a crucial distinction that often gets lost in popular science. We tend to use the words mind and brain interchangeably, but they are fundamentally different entities. The mind is the action.
Like the software.
Right. It is how you think, how you feel, and how you choose. It is your consciousness and your non-conscious processing. The brain, on the other hand, is the physical substance. The tissue, the neurons, the neurochemicals, the blood vessels inside your skull. It is the hardware. Your mind is the software program that tells the hardware what to do.
And we never stop thinking, do we?
Never. You cannot go 3 seconds without thinking. Your mind is always in action.
So because the mind is always acting, it is constantly commanding the physical brain to change its structure to accommodate those thoughts.
Clinical data actually backs that up beautifully.
Yeah.
This brings us to a concept called neuroplasticity, which simply means the brain's ability to change, reorganize, and mold itself based on our experiences.
Which used to be considered impossible for adults, right?
Yes. For a long time, science believed that once you reached adulthood, your brain was fixed. Hardwired.
Yeah.
We now know that is entirely false. But Dr. Leaf highlights something incredibly important called the plastic paradox.
The plastic paradox.
Yes. The brain is constantly changing, but neuroplasticity is neutral. It can change in a negative direction just as easily as a positive one.
Meaning, if I spend 2 hours obsessing over a mistake I made at work, I am not just having a bad afternoon. I am physically building and reinforcing a neural pathway for anxiety.
You are literally altering the physical landscape of your brain tissue to make it easier to feel anxious the next time. Every time you ruminate on a toxic thought, you are wiring that toxic habit into your brain.
That is wild to think about.
But because your mind is the director of this change, the reverse is also true. You can deliberately use your mind to wire in healthy, positive changes. You are the architect of the renovation.
That transitions us beautifully to understanding what we are actually building. Takeaway 2, the anatomy of a thought. Dr. Leaf uses this brilliant metaphor of a thought tree to explain how our thoughts actually live and grow inside our brains.
It is a phenomenal visual because it grounds an abstract concept into physical reality. Thoughts are not just fleeting mist or invisible energy floating around your head. They are physical structures that occupy real estate in your brain, primarily made of proteins.
So like an actual tree.
Imagine a tree. This tree has 3 distinct parts, representing how we process and store experiences. First, you have the branches and the leaves. These represent your conscious thinking, your words, and your behaviors.
It's the visible parts.
Exactly. It's the visible part of the tree. It is what you say and do that the rest of the world sees.
Right, so if I snap at my partner because they left a coffee cup on the counter, that's snapping the words I use and the agitated tone of my voice. Those are the leaves on my tree.
Yes. Now, moving down beneath the surface, you have the trunk of the tree. The trunk represents the subconscious. This is where you experience physical and emotional warning signals.
Like what?
It's that sudden knot in your stomach, the racing heartbeat, the flush of heat in your face, or that hovering sense of dread. The trunk is essentially your autonomic nervous system reacting. It connects the visible behavior to the hidden source.
And then we get down into the soil, to the most important part, the roots.
The roots represent the non-conscious mind. This is where the origin memories live. And it's vital to understand that memories aren't just informational, like a Wikipedia page of your life. They are heavily emotional and physical, too.
So it's not just a fact, it's a feeling stored in the body.
Precisely. So you're snapping about the coffee cup the leaves is connected to a sudden knot of tension in your chest. The trunk, which is drawing its toxic nutrients from a deep, non-conscious root.
So that root could be anything.
That root might be a memory of feeling deeply disrespected or unvalued in a past relationship, or perhaps a childhood environment where messiness equated to chaos and danger.
The major takeaway here for you listening is this. Whatever you think about the most grows. If you keep watering a toxic root by ruminating on it, or by constantly reacting to the leaves without examining the soil, that tree gets bigger, stronger, and more entrenched in your brain.
You are literally feeding it energetic and chemical resources.
But neurobiology has a built-in cleanup crew. If you stop watering that specific tree, the brain eventually prunes it away.
Which is why simply trying to chop off the leaves never works long-term. You can try to force yourself to stop snapping at your partner through sheer willpower, but if you don't understand the root of feeling unvalued, the tree will just grow new leaves.
New leaves, new arguments.
You have to address the root system to physically dismantle the structure.
So if we are actively trying to dismantle these old toxic trees and build fragile new thought trees, how long does that construction project actually take? Because I've always been told if I can just tough it out for 21 days, I'll have a new habit.
Ah, yes, the 21-day rule.
Which brings us to takeaway 3, the 63-day habit mythbuster. Here's where it gets really interesting. We have all heard it. It takes 21 days to form a habit. You see it in fitness challenges, diet programs, productivity apps, but it's actually a complete myth.
It really is one of the most pervasive myths in modern self-help. The history of this is quite fascinating. It stems primarily from a cosmetic surgeon named Dr. Maxwell Maltz back in the 1950s and 60s.
A cosmetic surgeon, not a neuroscientist.
Right. He published a blockbuster book called Psycho-Cybernetics. Maltz noticed that when he performed surgery, like a nose job or amputated a limb, it took his patients roughly 21 days to stop feeling the phantom limb or to get used to their new reflection in the mirror.
So it was just an observational anecdote about adjusting to physical surgery?
Essentially, yes. He wrote that it requires a minimum of about 21 days for an old mental image to dissolve and a new one to gel. But society latched on to the 21 days part, dropped the minimum, and applied it to literally everything from quitting smoking to learning a new language.
It's amazing how a casual observation became global psychological gospel.
It really is.
So what happens when we look at the actual clinical trial data that Dr. Leaf presents?
The brain requires significantly more time to create a sustainable automated habit. Based on functional MRIs, EEGs, and blood work, Dr. Leaf's research shows it takes 21 days of daily, deliberate thought to build the physical proteins in the brain.
Just to build them.
Yes. When you learn something new, your neurons grow tiny branch-like structures called dendrites. This protein synthesis takes about 3 weeks. So at 21 days, you have indeed built the new thought tree. But it is incredibly fragile.
It's like a brand new sapling you just planted in the yard. If a heavy storm comes along, it's going to get uprooted and blown over immediately.
That is the perfect analogy. The protein structures are weak. To make that sapling strong, it takes another 42 days of practice to automatize that thought.
Automatize? How does that work physically?
Automatizing involves complex neurobiological processes, including myelination, where the neural pathway is insulated with a fatty substance that makes a signal travel faster and more efficiently.
So the myelin is like weatherproofing the sapling.
Exactly. You are giving the pathway enough energy to become a useful, accessible habit that actually changes your behavior without you having to consciously force it.
Yeah.
So 21 days to build the thought, plus 42 days to automatize it. Total 63 days.
This changes everything. How many times have you tried a 21-day challenge, gotten to day 22, faced a highly stressful situation at work, and immediately reverted to your old habits?
Almost everyone has experienced that.
You probably sat there thinking you lacked willpower or you were just inherently lazy. No, your brain literally had not finished the construction project yet. The myelin hadn't set. It takes 63 days of structural engineering.
Understanding that biological timeline removes so much of the shame associated with relapse. You aren't weak. You just stopped the neurocycle before the biological process was complete.
And that takes us directly into the methodology itself. How do we actually do this for 63 days? Takeaway 4. The 5-step neurocycle. This is the daily, deliberate practice you do to rebuild those neural pathways.
And it only takes about 7 to 15 minutes a day.
Which is very doable. Let's walk through these 5 steps in detail. Step 1 is gather.
Gather is about becoming consciously aware of the branches and the leaves we talked about earlier, but crucially, without judgment.
No judgment. That's hard.
It is. In psychology, this is related to interoception, the ability to perceive physical sensations inside your body. You gather awareness of your physical warning signals and your behaviors. You notice, my stomach is in tight knots, my breathing is shallow, and I am being really defensive in this meeting.
But you don't say, I'm a terrible person for being defensive.
No, you don't label it as bad or beat yourself up. You just act as an objective scientist gathering the data of your current state.
Step 2 is reflect. This is where you look at the trunk and start digging toward the roots. You ask, answer, and discuss with yourself to understand where this emotional reaction is really coming from.
This is where the heavy lifting begins.
Yeah.
A highly effective tool to use during the reflect step is the 5 Why technique.
Oh, for manufacturing, right?
Yes, which was actually created by Sakichi Toyota for Toyota Industries to troubleshoot manufacturing errors. But it works brilliantly for the human mind. You simply ask why 5 times to drill down past the superficial answers.
Let's actually role play this to see how it works in practice. Let's use the coffee cup example from earlier. I'm doing my daily neurocycle, and my gather step was, I snapped at my partner over a coffee cup. My chest felt tight, and I felt the surge of anger. Now I'm on step 2. You be my internal guide.
All right. Why did you feel a surge of anger and snap over the coffee cup?
Because they always leave a mess and expect me to clean it up.
Okay, that's one. Why does them leaving a mess make you feel like they expect you to clean it up?
Because if I don't do it, it just sits there. It feels like they aren't considering my time.
That's 2. Why does it feel so deeply upsetting that they might not be considering your time?
Because it makes me feel like my time, and therefore my contribution to this household, isn't respected.
3. Why is feeling a lack of respect in the household triggering such a strong physical reaction in your chest?
Because I guess it reminds me of how I felt growing up. No matter how much I helped around the house, it was never acknowledged. I was just expected to be the quiet helper.
4. And why does being the quiet helper cause you pain today?
Because I learned that my only value was in what I could do for others, not in who I was. If my partner leaves the cup, my non-conscious mind instantly translates that to, you are only here to serve, you don't matter.
And there is the 5th why. We've moved from a coffee cup on the counter the leaves all the way down to a core childhood belief about your inherent worth and value, the toxic root.
Wow. Even just role-playing that, you can feel the shift in perspective. It has absolutely nothing to do with the coffee cup.
It rarely does. And that brings us to step 3, which is right. You have uncovered this profound realization, but if you keep it in your head, it remains entangled with the emotional chaos.
It's just swirling around in there.
Yes, you have to get it out your mind and onto paper. Dr. Leaf calls this building a metacog, which is short for a metacognitive map.
Right. And it's important to clarify that this isn't just regular linear journaling like writing Dear Diary, today I realized.
Correct. Traditional journaling can sometimes keep you trapped in the emotional loop of the story. A metacog is about spatial organization. You put your core trigger or the root thought in the center of a blank page, and you literally draw branches outward to map the chaos.
So it's very visual.
Very. You write the trigger, then draw a line to the physical feeling, a line to the memory, a line to the behavior. This visual, spatial mapping forces your brain to utilize different neural networks. The physical act of moving your hand across the paper to organize these thoughts pulls them out of the non-conscious mind and into the conscious mind, where the protein structures are temporarily malleable and can be altered.
That is fascinating. The physical act of mapping it out actually softens the neural pathway so we can mess with it, which leads right into step 4, recheck. This is the mental autopsy. You look at what you've mapped out and you begin the process of reconceptualization.
I absolutely love the metaphor Dr. Leaf uses here, kintsugi. It's the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with lacquer mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum.
It's beautiful pottery, too.
It is. The philosophy behind kintsugi is that you do not disguise the breakage. You treat the repair as part of the beautiful, resilient history of the object. When you recheck your thoughts in step 4, You aren't trying to erase your past, deny your trauma, or pretend the brokenness didn't happen. That's toxic positivity.
Instead, you are creatively reconceptualizing it. You are adding gold to the cracks.
Precisely. It is the neurobiological equivalent of reconsolidation. You are changing the emotional payload of the memory. Looking at your metacog about the coffee cup in your childhood, the recheck step might look like saying, yes, I was treated as just a helper growing up. That was painful and unfair. But I am an adult now. I am an equal partner in my home, and a forgotten coffee cup is just a mistake, not a referendum on my human worth. I survived that childhood, and it made me deeply empathetic to others.
You are rebuilding the narrative beautifully.
You really are.
That is so empowering. You acknowledge the break, but you make the repair the focal point. And finally, we arrive at step 5, active reach. This is a simple, actionable daily statement or physical action you use to practice the new golden thought you just created in step 4. You do this at least 7 times a day. It is the daily watering of the new plant.
The repetition of 7 times a day is key because neuroplasticity responds to consistency over intensity. To ground this entire 5-step process, let's look at the personal example Dr. Leaf shares in the book.
I love when experts use their own struggles as examples.
It's very humanizing. Even as a cognitive neuroscientist, she realized she had a deeply ingrained toxic habit of constantly thinking, if only I did the research this way, or if only I'd said that to my kids. It was stealing her joy and frustrating her family. So she put her own habit through her 5 steps.
Let's track her progress. For step 1, gather, she noticed her physical tension and how her family was reacting to her constant second-guessing. Step 2, reflect. She drilled down and realized this stemmed from a toxic root of needing to be perfect to feel secure and valuable in her work.
And then for step 3, she created a metacog to visually map out how this perfectionism was spiderwebbing into every area of her life.
Step 4, recheck. She applied the gold, realizing that human error is inevitable, that she could never be perfect, and that her value wasn't tied to an impossibly flawless record.
And then for step 5, her active reach was a simple grounding statement. Remember, no if-onlys today. I did the best I could with the information I had at the time.
Such a powerful statement.
Every time she felt the urge to second-guess herself throughout the day, she repeated that active reach. She practiced those 5 steps, spending about 15 minutes a day for 21 days to break down the old protein structures of perfectionism and build the new thought. And then she spent the next 42 days just practicing her active reach to myelinate and solidify the new habit.
So 63 days total to completely rewire a lifelong trait.
Yes.
It is a phenomenal example of directed neuroplasticity. She became the mind surgeon of her own brain. But let's be realistic for a second. Life happens fast. You won't always have 15 minutes to sit down with a journal and draw a metacog when a crisis hits at 2 in the afternoon on a Thursday.
That is a very practical concern, which is why the book also covers immediate triage.
Exactly. Takeaway 5, real-time neuroplasticity hacks. How do you handle the now moment when you are intensely triggered before you have the time or space to do the full 5 steps?
The first hack is incredibly practical, the 30 to 90 second rule. When you are triggered by something, an aggressive email from your boss, a rude comment from a stranger, a sudden intrusive memory, your brain's amygdala essentially sounds the alarm. You experience a massive biochemical surge of stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline, flooding your system.
And this temporarily hijacks the rational part of your brain.
Yes, your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logical thinking and emotional regulation, goes offline while your survival instincts take over. This biological state is what Dr. Leaf calls the regret zone.
The regret zone. I know it well.
We all do. It takes the body roughly 30 to 90 seconds for that initial neurochemical wave to wash through your system and begin to dissipate. If you react during this 90-second window, you are almost guaranteed to say or do something you will regret because you are operating purely on survival hardware, not logic. The hack is simply to wait it out.
Breathe. Do not hit send on that email. Do not open your mouth to snap back. Just let the biochemical wave pass before you attempt to respond.
Just ride the wave. And speaking of waves, the second real-time hack is what she calls the multiple perspective advantage, or MPA. I love visualizing this one.
Oh, this is my favorite analogy in the book. Imagine you are standing on a surfboard out in the ocean. The waves rolling in are your chaotic thoughts and intense emotions. Instead of letting the wave crash over you, tumble you underwater, and drown you, you stand firmly on the board and objectively observe the wave as it passes beneath you.
You're above the chaos.
Yes, you watch your own thoughts happening from the outside. You literally say to yourself, Wow, look at that huge wave of anger rolling in. Look at how my hands are shaking. Just the act of observing it detaches you from the emotion enough to keep you from drowning in it.
It sounds poetic, but it is deeply neurological. It requires you to step out of the chaos and become a metacognitive observer of your own mind. When
Yeah.
you deliberately observe yourself, you fire up the front of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, which pulls energy away from the panicked amygdala. You're literally using deliberate observation to calm the neurological storm and bring your wisdom centers back online.
So if we zoom out and look at everything we've explored today, so what does this all mean? The core message is that you are the interior designer of your own mind. No, you probably didn't choose the trauma you experienced. You didn't choose the stressful work environment, the economic downturn, or the unexpected life changes that caused your anxiety. But you do have the biological capability to choose how your brain physically wires those experiences moving forward. You do not have to be a permanent victim to your own biology.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a profound, albeit challenging, call to action. Mind management isn't a quick fix. It isn't a magic pill that will make you perfectly happy by tomorrow morning. It takes hard, deliberate work about 7 to 15 minutes a day for 63 days straight just to tackle one specific toxic thought tree. But the reward for that discipline is unparalleled. You gain genuine mental peace, true neurological resilience, and a profound sense of autonomy over your own life trajectory.
It's exactly like doing reps at the mental gym. You wouldn't expect to have a visible six-pack after one day of doing sit-ups. You cannot expect a permanently peaceful mind after one day of positive thinking. It is structural neuroarchitecture.
Before we go, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder something that extends beyond just your own personal peace. What if the mental distress you've been running from or trying to medicate away is actually your own brilliant non-conscious mind trying to hand you the exact blueprint you need to heal?
That is heavy. So the anxiety I feel is actually a roadmap.
Exactly. Instead of viewing the symptoms as the enemy, view them as messengers. If neuroplasticity allows us to rebuild our brain architecture, and if our mind directs our biology, then engaging in this 63-day neurocycle isn't just about fixing what is broken. It is about taking the blueprint your mind is desperately handing you and finally building the resilient, peaceful mind you deserve.
That is an incredibly powerful place to stop. We aren't just architects for our own lives, but we are actually decoding our own healing. That's today's breakdown. While this discussion cannot replace the book's full text, it can offer a glimpse into its teachings. I hope you found this discussion helpful, and I look forward to sharing more. Let me know what book next you want to discuss.